Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling as well as the news and events around the hobby. Let's join Mike and Kentucky Dave as they strive to be informative, entertaining, and help you keep your modeling mojo alive.
All right, Dave, it's 1:13.
We are well into 2024 now, man.
I know. April's here. We've had the 12-minute model sphere. It's time for this first episode this week, and looking forward to this one.
You mean this month?
Yes, this month. Well, it's the second thing we've dropped this week.
Yeah, that's true.
Got a Mike and Dave spectacular tonight.
There you go.
Hope we pull it off.
Yep.
Well, man, what's in your model sphere?
Well, as you can imagine, my model sphere is full. I've been reading the latest detail and scale on the P38, which really makes me want Tamiya to downsize their 48 scale P38. I've been organizing the additions that I picked up from HeritageCon and putting them in the proper places. I've been prepping for amps. I've been trying to, I'm pulled in a lot of directions, but it's all good. It's all feeling right. Let's put it this way. There's mojo, and that's what it's all about. How about your model sphere?
I hope there's mojo. That's the name of the podcast.
Yeah, I know.
But I understand. I'm pulled in a lot of directions too. I've been trying to get my build mojo going. We'll talk more about that in the benchtop halftime report. That's despite my desire, I've had a little trouble getting things moving on the bench this past week. So again, more on that later. We've got a few things done. But behind the scenes, like you said, we're getting ready for amps. Unfortunately, we're going to have to give the Roscoe Turner show the skip this year, but if anybody is in a commutable distance to that show in the greater Indianapolis area up there, I can't remember, where is it? Lebanon, Indiana. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
I believe that's correct.
Northwest Indianapolis.
That's right. Please go to that show. It's a good one. Michael Radke, Special Agent 001, actually posted some show information to the Plastic Model Dojo just today, in fact, and I had to let him know that we weren't going to be making it.
Yeah.
But he asked if you were going to be in South Bend. I said probably, so we'll get to see him anyway.
Listen, if it wasn't for amps being in South Bend, we would definitely be at Roscoe Turner. It's just there's no way we can pull off HeritageCon, Roscoe Turner, and amps and in survive.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a bad plan, man.
Yeah, that would be.
Those days are over.
Yeah.
Really, man, that's all I got. I've been trying to got the hotel lined up. We're going to take my car to South Bend because it's not so far, so there's no rental car. Looking forward to that trip. It's going to be kind of a shotgun one because we can't get a very early start. We'll be heading up there on Friday morning, and that's just the way it's got to be.
Yeah, but we're getting there. That's the important part.
We are getting there, and it's been a long time coming.
Yes, absolutely. So, Mike, I am assuming that you have a modeling fluid for this episode.
I do. I am drinking a Bulleit, but I'm drinking their 10-year.
Oh, good choice.
I found a new staple, so we'll have to see how that compares at the end of the episode, but we'll do that. But for now, I think it'll get me through the episode. What about you?
Well, I am drinking something new and different from the brewery Beak and Skiff out of New York. I am drinking their Light Up the Night Black Cherry Premium Hard Cider. I like black cherry as a flavor. This is new to me, so we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it's going to be good.
Well, I hope so. It sounds at risk for tasting like NyQuil, but we'll see at the end.
Yep.
Well, Dave, folks have been sending in some listener mail, man.
Good.
And we probably ought to get into that.
Yes.
Well, Scott Huber from State College, Pennsylvania, wrote in last episode, and he wanted to make a clarification. He's the one that mentioned that your Tamiya Engineering favorite 72nd scale Zero had lineage to their motorcycle kits.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we kind of thought maybe that was a little facetious, or maybe we came across that way.
Okay.
But he's actually quite serious. So think about this a minute.
Mm-hmm.
A motorcycle has nowhere to hide anything. Alignment is pretty critical. So if anything's out of whack anywhere, it's going to cause visible fit issues and frustrating fit and alignment issues all throughout the build. So Scott contends that when they started cutting their teeth on these motorcycle kits 20 years ago, that they were laying the foundation for what would become exemplary engineering across the product line.
I would not argue with that. That analysis makes sense to me. I think that that's absolutely true, that motorcycle kits are complex, and because of the fact that they are so exposed, I think it makes perfect sense that the experience that Tamiya gained doing those and making those kits better and better definitely shows itself in their other kits, their other military kits post the motorcycles.
Yeah, and I suspect maybe the Formula One stuff kind of crept in there as well.
I could see that argument as well.
It's an interesting observation, and thanks for raising it. Well, Dave, Tony at Horizon Models is making us aware of their 72nd scale Atlas Agena.
Yes.
So, folks, if you're into real space, this is hot on the heels of our last episode.
Yes, and I mentioned in that episode that the Atlas Agena are the first spaceship or the first U.S. rockets that I truly remember as a kid. I remember the program, and I remember how cool it was that they were going to dock in space. That hits all the member berries for me, and I truly cannot wait for this kit.
Member berries?
Member berries. Don't you ever listen to film criticism? They talk about member berries all the time.
Yeah, well, 16-year-old Dave needs to think about that statement.
Oh, please.
Mark Doremus from the greater Seattle area, Dave. Mark is still in the hotel after his residential fire.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. That's probably going to take a little while.
Oh, listen, that's a slog.
Well, I hope they gave him a deal.
Yeah.
Well, he's got a couple of musings here he'd like to make us aware of.
All right.
Well, he says his temporary living quarters are the same distance from work as his house, but it's on a more heavily trafficked route, so he has more time in the car to listen to podcasts. You might think that's a good thing. Well, it isn't.
Uh-oh.
Someone asks a question, and it gets him off trying to answer the question. He misses several minutes of the conversation. A couple of times he's had to pause a podcast and compose a reply as he's driving along, or someone may make something controversial, a statement controversial. That's not our show.
Yeah, no.
And he's got to argue with them. But the worst is, and this is probably where we come in, the worst is when someone describes a technique or a tool and he can't stop to take notes.
Well, that's the nice thing about a podcast as opposed to live radio. You know that you can always go back, fast forward through it, find that section when you're sitting safely at your desk at work, where you can, with a piece of paper, and you're not in danger of getting in an auto accident. We don't want any of our listeners to get in auto accidents listening to our podcast.
He also says that we've talked about reading in the past, the inspiration we get from reading. You in particular, less so me.
Absolutely. You're a photograph man. I'm definitely a reading guy.
I like picture books. I'm still a kindergartner at heart.
Well, I wasn't going to go there, but yeah.
Well, he was having trouble seeing the connection, probably because he wasn't reading enough, as he says here. Lacking an adequate modeling bench, because he's on a hotel desk-ish kind of arrangement. He's been spending an hour or two every evening reading mostly World War II histories, in particular some research on the M3 Lee's building at the hotel. It's 72nd scale, so it fits onto his tiny table.
Yep.
I hope you get better accommodations real soon, Mark.
I do too. But listen, once again, proving that 72nd scale is the perfect scale. If you're burned out of your house and your model room and you're forced to go live in a hotel, 72nd scale is just the right scale for building something on one of those little tiny hotel desks.
Not to wish anybody's house burns down.
Oh, no. No, and we hope he gets to a more permanent accommodation soon.
Well, he's inspired to try all sorts of new things, like a PB2Y Coronado, Flower Class Corvette, and maybe several M3 Lee Grant variants.
You know, the M3, if you watch the YouTubes of the Australian Armour Museum, they have, because the Australians used a lot of M3s and because a lot were used in Burma and India and all, they have a number of them. And those vehicles are fascinating.
Up next, Dave, Rock Rozak.
All right.
From Detail and Scale. Now, you mentioned your P38 book, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about here.
Oh, okay.
Rock is making us aware, in more ways than one, of their new Detail and Scale series, Volume 18, the P38 Lightning, Part 1. So there's more to come, Dave.
Yes.
The XP38 prototype through the P38H variants also covers the F4A and F5A photographic reconnaissance variants. The book's about the P38 Lightning, folks, and it's a really cool plane. This is a really good book. So pick it up if you're into such things.
Yep, absolutely.
And he was at HeritageCon vending.
Oh, and I wish you and I had been able to do the Bachelor
Model World Tour.
Yes, that would have been way cool.
It would have been. Well, we need to keep that in mind, see if those shows are the same weekend next year. They probably won't be.
Yeah.
But you never know. We could still do Michigan Toy.
Yes, that's true. Also known as the Hustad.
Up next, Jason Campbell, our Tennessee Gundam guy. He went to AtlantaCon 2024.
Oh, good.
With a bunch of his Friday Gundam group buddies, 9 of them total. Made the trip down to Atlanta. They had a great time.
Well, that's fantastic.
Even talked Gundam with some people who were intrigued by one of his builds and the markings on the kit, which he'd used some embossed dry transfer gilding on some of the armor sections. Jason, send us a picture of that. I think I know what you mean, but I'd like to see it.
Absolutely, and post it in the dojo. Now,
as we all do at scale model shows, he had some questionable financial decisions. That's like, I'm not even going to say half. That's like 61% of the fun of going to a scale model show.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you. And their next show is going to be the Knoxville show in late May. I think that's where we're going to feature in our model show showcase, our spotlight coming up a little later this month. The Knoxville Club, and I don't know, man. We'll have a little drought after AMPS. Maybe we can get down there.
I know.
Well, again, on the real space theme, Dave, this is actually a response from Mike Idakavich, who's our guest in episode 112, talking about real space. It's proved pretty popular.
Yeah, extremely.
I'd sent Mike Idakavich a question because I'm probably going to pick up that new Artemis kit from, I guess it's an AMT branded kit from round 2.
Yeah.
Maybe MPC, but I think it's AMT.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. Round 2. And that rocket in its current configuration, like the several before it, including the later shuttles, the external fuel tank is orange.
Yep.
And I'd asked him about, hey, what's the current thought on the kind of the color of that? Because I think I'm going to get this Artemis kit, and it's got the same kind of deal going on. And that stuff is a spray insulation.
Yes, it is.
That starts out a pale yellow, and as it ages in the sun and UV light from whatever source, it starts creeping toward rust brown and orange.
Yep.
So another one of those, it depends, or whatever color you want to paint it.
You're right. Artistic license.
Would seem so, Dave.
Yep.
Mike, thank you for the information. He sent me a lot more than that, but we'll leave it at that for now.
Sure.
Finally, Easter greetings from Michael Karnauka.
All right.
Happy Easter to both of us. Hope we squeeze in some modeling time, and we did. Not too productive, but we got a little in.
I ate too much. That's
Well,
the big thing.
well, I'm glad I watched that. I did not eat too much.
Oh, I ate way too much.
I was a spectator. His question is in regards to recent manufacturers. Which recent new manufacturer did you miss getting a kit from before it vanished or folded up shop? Now, he is referencing a kit from Dio Park. You remember them?
No, God.
They had some Vespa scooters, kind of Vietnam themed.
Oh, yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then he also references a Soviet STZ tractor and then one with a Katyusha rocket on the back of it that seems to have vanished. And he's also late in the game for the 35th scale Vickers light tank. Well, I can answer a few things on some of these. Dio Park, I don't know what happened to them. I know Gecko is starting to release some Vietnam War themed diorama friendly figure sets and accessory sets.
And I think they have that 3-wheel.
They got the little taxi thing.
The little taxi, not the 2-wheel Vespa thing, but the 3-wheel scooter thing that you see all over China if you go to China.
So I would watch out. I wouldn't pay the eBay ransom price for the Dio Park Vespa because I think that's probably coming.
Yeah,
somewhere else. Now the Soviet STZ it's either Rish or Vulcan. I can't remember. Yeah, I could go back to my stash and I could answer this, but we're not going to do that. They released an STZ tractor in Soviet and German markings. The Katyusha version was to be released by one or the other, but not the same one, along with their own STZ. So when the STZ came out from whichever one of these actually released it, another company was going to do it as well, and they never released the kits. So there was an STZ release, 2 boxings. The only difference was the nationality who was operating the vehicle. But the Katyusha launch version was never tooled, never got released. And that second STZ kit, Soviet, from that same manufacturer, never got released. So you really didn't miss that one. It never happened. Now, the Vickers, I think, is from Vulcan, and that thing's readily available on eBay, and it's really not terribly expensive. I don't know if anybody else is making it or not, but those things are out there. Now, has there anything that I missed personally? I can say that the Katyusha version of the STZ was one that I thought I'd missed until it turned out on ScaleMates that it never appeared out of the vapor. So I guess I didn't miss it. I don't know. The things I typically miss are aftermarket resin items that I push off and push off and push off, and then they're gone. Now, let me tell you, an out-of-production scale model kit is way easier to find than a piece of aftermarket.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Hustad was looking for a Edward photo etch set that was no longer in production. He was finally able to find it, but yeah, it was a slog locating. And you're right, the model kits are actually a whole lot easier to locate.
What about you, man? Is there anything you missed?
There's nothing that comes in off the top of my head that I missed, but I'm with you. The things that I know that I've missed have been photo etch, resin, or decal sheets. I think one of the reasons I have the obsession with the decal sheets that I do is the fact that I have passed on decal sheets and then later regretted it. And, decal sheets tend to be very short runs. They're one run, and when they're gone, they're gone. There are several of those over the years that I've gone, darn, I wish I'd gotten when I saw them at this show or that show.
It's probably some you wish you'd doubled up on so you'd have some barter material down the road.
That too, yes, absolutely.
Well, Dave, that's it from the email side. What's been happening on direct message?
Well, on direct message, really, the direct messages have fallen into 2 categories. One category is people who've direct messaged to say they absolutely loved the Real Space episode. Dave Goldfinch, John Chung, a number of folks saying they really, really liked the Real Space episode. And in with those are the people who saw us at HeritageCon and shouted out to us on DMs either while we were traveling there or while we were traveling back. On the other side, we've got the folks who are looking forward to seeing us at AMPS Brandon Jacobs just DM'd yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I saw that one.
So the DMs haven't been as much substance as they normally are. They really just have fallen into the categories of, hey, I loved the Real Space episode. Hey, hope to see you at HeritageCon. Glad I saw you at HeritageCon. And then folks are saying, really looking forward to seeing you at AMP. So it's been a lot of short back and forth as opposed to more long form discussion.
Well, folks, we love the email. We love the DMs, even if they're about you're looking forward to seeing us. We appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
But that aside, please send us your questions. Send us your recommendations. Send us things you'd like us to look into. Whatever, man. We don't care. We like this segment a lot, and we look forward to your emails and direct messages. If you want to email, you can do so at plasticmodelmojo@gmail.com, or just send us a direct message through Facebook, and we'll sort those out and get them on the air.
Folks, by now you know what I'm going to say next, which is, if you haven't given the podcast a rating in whatever podcasting app you're listening on, please do that. Please give us 5 stars. It helps drive the visibility, and we appreciate that. Also, the way we get new listeners the most is current listeners telling their modeling friends. Every one of you out there has a modeling friend. Some of those folks are not listening to podcasts or aren't aware of Plastic Model Mojo. Please recommend us, show them how to download a podcast. The best way for us to get new listeners is to have our current listeners evangelize for us, and they do a great job. So please keep that up.
And after you've done that, please check out all the other podcasts out there in the model sphere. You can do so by going to www.modelpodcasts.com. That's Model Podcast plural. It's a consortium website set up with the help of Stuart Clark, the host of Scale Model Podcast up in Canada. Now, he's aggregated all the banner links to the podcasts who are participating with us in the spirit of cross promotion. You can go to that website and find all the links there. The one at the top of the list changes at random. You can go there and click those links to go directly to the other shows. In addition to the podcast, we got a lot of blog and YouTube friends out there in the model sphere. Chris Wallace, model airplane maker. It's got a good blog and a good YouTube channel.
And we just got to see him at HeritageCon and had a blast.
We did. Jeff Groves, the inch high guy, all things 72nd scale. Great blog. He does a lot of cool stuff in that scale, batch builds, some bigger projects, and he's going to be an upcoming guest here soon. So we're finally going to get the mysterious inch high guy on Plastic Model Mojo.
Yep.
Stephen Lee, Sprue Pie with Frets, long and short form blog, mostly 72nd scale. Again, Steve's got a lot of stuff to say about the hobby and around the hobby. You can find those blog posts almost daily at Steve's Sprue Pie with Frets blog. And also Evan McCallum, Panzermeister 36, just teased us all with the April Fool's episode on his YouTube channel. And Jim Bates, Scale Canadian TV. Some interesting commentary on the hobby can be found on YouTube.
If you are not a member of IPMS USA, IPMS UK, IPMS Canada, or whatever national IPMS organization where you live, please consider joining. They are organizations of volunteers dedicated to trying to make the modeling community and the modeling experience better. And if you are an armor enthusiast, please consider joining the Armor Modeling and Preservation Society, AMPS, AMPS. They have their national show coming up in South Bend in 2 weeks, or week and a half, I guess, by the time this drops. You definitely want to go.
Well, Dave, our special segment tonight is a potpourri of things.
Yes.
We recorded a couple of segments at HeritageCon. And then we've got a topic we're going to pontificate on a little bit. And I think the first up is going to be a special segment from our friend Ian MacAulay from up in Ottawa, who we saw at HeritageCon. Well, Dave, we made it.
Yes, we did.
We made it to HeritageCon again, HeritageCon 16, and part of all this, the best part is getting to see all our Canadian friends that we only see online for the rest of the year. So we got one here, Ian MacAulay. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Good to see you guys.
That's right. Good to see you, and you're up here representing Hobby Center, the shop up there, up your way, right?
That's right. After I retired, took a job there 2 days a week with Bill. Great guy, great store, lots of fun. We got lots of deals up here, so it's been busy. This is the first time I've been able to walk around and see what's going on, not just standing behind the table.
Well, that's good.
Now, how many tables did Hobby Center have here at the...
6.
6?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Business brisk?
Business has been extremely brisk.
Yeah, well, they take this funny plastic money. It's great.
It's great, but it's easy to tell apart.
Yeah. So did you bring something to enter in the contest?
I did. I brought 5 different cars and a BMP1 and an AMX 30.
Oh, okay.
They're all on the table now. I haven't even had a chance to go and look at the table yet, so I'll have to go do that soon.
The models are great. It's slightly fewer than last year's unbelievable record number, but the categories are full. It's a little less crowded, so you can get to actually see the models.
Yeah,
so,
that's the best part. And there's still a ton of vendors, like
oh yes,
unbelievable amount of vendors.
Yep, they've gotten a fair amount of my money. I see that they've gotten a little of yours.
A little bit of mine, yeah.
Is that the only thing you bought?
No, I bought one of my buddies won a. Okay, I'm going to make a fool of myself here. Won an airplane kit. Remember the one I was talking to you about? I said when it comes in British markings and American markings, and it had just come out by Tamiya again with British marking.
I don't know which one. I don't remember.
Anyway, one of the guys in the group won that as a door prize. He didn't buy it. Didn't want it. I bought it off him. So,
all right.
So I've got it. Shows how much I know airplanes. You know.
So you're getting deals.
I'm getting deals. I'm getting deals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got a Hasegawa 68 Toyota Corolla for $20.
Oh, good.
So I was happy with that too.
Good.
Well, that's interesting. I think do you build, I don't want to call them real cars, but normal street cars much?
You know what's funny is I've always built American cars, rods, street rods, stuff like that. But I've been hanging out with guys that like to build European and Japanese cars, and it sort of turned me on to them, and I've been building them now, and they're fabulous kids. Well, amazing kids.
I tell you what, is for car builders, car modelers, this show is a great show. Not only are there lots of cars entered, but a fair number of the vendors have lots of car models and car accessories, which, at some shows you might not see quite as much.
No, exactly. No, it's good. There's been quite a turnout for the cars, which is nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got hecklers.
Who is that guy anyway?
Well, so now you all are vending until close the show?
Till close the show, and then we're packing up, and we'll probably do dinner with you guys.
Yep.
And then head out to the dojo, and we're staying over we usually pack up and head for home, but I talked Bill into staying an extra night, primarily because you guys were here.
Okay.
And I knew I wouldn't get to see much of you before.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you this evening.
So we'll have some fun this evening.
Talk about all the fun we had.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank
We'll
you.
catch up with you later.
Talk to you later.
Well, Dave, Ian was pretty busy with the Hobby Center, but he did come by that last night and went to dinner with us and hung out at the dojo.
Had a great time. It was really good seeing Ian.
Dave, we cooked this one up on the way to and on the way from HeritageCon.
Yep.
We were talking about model kit instructions, kind of the good, bad, and ugly around that, and thought that might make an interesting discussion.
Yes.
I'm sure the listeners can relate to this, and hopefully they'll get back with us and give us some feedback about what they think about kit instructions. But to start this off, let's frame this a little bit so folks will have some context as to where each of us are coming from, because they probably overlap a little bit, but they're probably not exactly the same place. What type of instruction follower are you?
Not as good as I should be. And you know what? Ironically, after 30 plus years building models, I am now getting to the point where I follow the instructions more rather than less. Now, I still look through them and I still think, no, I don't want to do this in that order, especially on aircraft where it comes to landing gear, which if you can, you almost always want to add it at the end. And some kits don't allow that. And if you look through the instructions ahead of time, you'll know that so that you don't get caught in that trap. But I'm actually becoming more and more of a believer in closely following the instructions than I used to be. When I first started modeling, I glanced at instructions and basically took them as nothing more than a suggestion for the way a particular kit ought to be built. How about you?
Well, before we get to me, I would say for you, though, that's interesting. I would think you would learn through experience to deviate for the very reasons you said, where things might be better put in somewhere else. Like you mentioned, landing gear, especially from when I was building a lot of, that's when I was a kid, mind you, a lot of 72nd scale 2 and 4 engine planes.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all those old kits, when you assemble the wings, you got to put the landing gear in.
Right. You had to, they were trapped landing gear.
Right. So you know what happened later down the road, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They got broken off. Now there's some engineering you probably do on the side there and figure out a way to put those in later. And that's a whole different topic. But for me, I'm kind of a ish instructions person. Now,
well, you're barely a kit person to begin with, so it's not exactly surprising that instructions are maybe less important because, heck, you're many times not using half the parts in a kit.
Well, that's probably another topic too, but I would think, well, for aircraft, particularly multi-engine versus single engine, some of those things are pretty different.
Mm-hmm.
There's some traditional build steps and some of those kits that are like, again, the trapped landing gear versus a single engine plane probably puts them in later, right?
Right.
Armor kits, for the most part, tend to follow the same build sequence, regardless of the manufacturer, regardless of the subject. Typically, it's lower hull running gear, upper hull fittings, turret gun, and that's kind of the way it goes, right?
Right.
So you can kind of get mind numb to some of that, especially if you're doing a lot of research and you kind of know the subject pretty well and think through a project, which maybe that's another show topic later down the road. But typically the armor type instructions are pretty straightforward. Now we'll get into some examples here where they're not so much, but for me, I'm still kind of they're not rules, they're guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
To quote Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, a movie reference rather than a song reference. That's
right.
Let's talk about where this discussion first started. We acquired the Flyhawk BT7 kit in 72nd scale.
Yep, we did.
And this kit's instructions are really, really good. I mean, very much state of the art. It's a booklet. Each instruction shows the assembly of the parts in that step, but then they're color coded and each part is called out color coded at the top of the step, in addition to showing the parts being assembled. It's really state of the art instructions. And you, because of what you do at work, you have to, lay out instructions. And you were saying you were going to use these as an example at work to show people a really, really good set of instructions, really clear, really step by step. And I think you and I were both impressed by the level of quality. I mean, this is a 72nd scale Russian BT-7 tank. It's not that big.
That's like 4 inches long.
Yeah. And this instruction booklet is just really one of the best things I think I've ever seen come along as far as that regard goes.
Well, it's interesting because I have a Flyhawk Dauntless.
Uh-huh.
And the instructions in that are good, but they're not like this tank kit.
Yeah. And that Flyhawk Dauntless, that's only 2 years ago, maybe 2.5.
I guess my fear is we're sitting here raving about this BT kit. Now, it was released last year.
Right.
It's the first Flyhawk armor kit I've ever had in my hands. So I don't know what, like their FT-17, some of their first ones, what the instructions for those look like. I don't know if this is new or if it's old hat. So if it's old hat and we're talking like it's brand new, sorry folks, but
it's new to us.
It's new to us. We were ignorant before, and we opened this kit up and we're like, holy crap, man, why can't they all be like this?
Well, and this kind of caused you and I to reminisce. We're talking about back in the 60s and 70s with the early Matchbox and early Airfix or Revell or whatever, where you didn't get a set of instructions. All you got was an exploded view of all the parts that kind of suggested where they all went together, but nothing there was nothing step by step about a lot of those early kits. It was just, here's all the parts, what they look like off the sprue, and you kind of put them together so that they all look like this at the end.
Well, that's kind of my next bullet. Examples of bad instructions.
Oh, God.
Which in this early era of plastic modeling, by contemporary standards, they were all bad.
Yeah.
And ones that come to mind is when we were up at Columbus, I picked up 2 Airfix Bristol Bloodhounds.
Yes.
Not the new vintage classic release.
These were original pressings.
I got one from the 60s and one from the 70s. And it's interesting. Back to this real space. If you listen to the latest OTB, Dave Goldfinch just picked up one of the new Bristol Bloodhounds as well.
Yes, I know.
Well, back to the old ones. The 60s version of the kit I picked up, the instructions for that thing are all verbiage.
Oh, really?
There's a drawing off to the side of that shows the parts with numbers.
Yeah.
But it's not an exploded view. An exploded view would, in my mind, in my engineering mind, has dashed trace lines back to the intersection and interface points on those parts. This is just an outlay of the parts with numbers next to them. And then the assembly instructions are verbiage. So if you couldn't read, you're up the creek, man. I don't know how many people out there that would include in the scale model world, but certainly you would need to be literate to follow these instructions.
Literate in English.
Now, by contrast and comparison, the 70s kit did away with the verbiage and pretty much just had exploded views with the dashed lines.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of went wholly the other way. So the instructions in my 70s pressing of the Bristol Bloodhound is kind of reminiscent. It's probably the exact same instructions that would have been on a carded blister Airfix kit. I don't know if they boxed the Bristol Bloodhound that way or not.
I don't think they did.
I don't think they did either. But I've got a couple in the stash that are some other subjects that I looked at them before we started tonight. So yeah, that's what they did.
Well, and that's interesting because I can guarantee you between those 2 releases of that same kit, they did little or nothing to the molds or to the kit itself. But the one thing they did go back apparently redo was the instruction sheet.
Yep.
Which I think is kind of interesting. And also, I would speculate, given how bad most all of the instruction sheets in the 60s and 70s were, maybe one of the reasons that modelers don't follow the instructions is that we all grew up with really bad instructions, and so we got used to not paying attention to them or paying less than full attention to them.
Yeah, certainly the folks in our demographic.
Yes, exactly.
maybe the Evans of the world are spoiled.
You know what I'd love to hear from, because I don't know and have never seen them, the Gundam builders.
Oh yeah.
I would love to hear from you all about what the Gundam instructions are like.
Well, I've built
And-
one. I built that Musaru Gundam.
Oh, that's right, you did.
And the instructions are good. I think the thing that's a challenge there is there's just so many sprues.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can get a little bit of an overload, but the instructions are generally good. But I would like to hear some hardcore Gundam builder expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, really. And, that's another point you raised, you talked about with the Gundam kits with so many sprues. We're seeing, particularly in armor, you're seeing armor kits with 500 and 600 pieces. Are the instructions on those commensurately complicated?
Well, I think a lot of that's burned up in the tracks, which is kind of handled in one step. So
Sure.
I don't know, maybe. And, I've got these examples of bad instructions Bulleit on my outline here. And we've talked about these Airfix kits. Another one from my memory are the instructions. Now I experienced them in the 1970s, mostly with their 48 scale aircraft kits, but the instructions were a legacy from the 60s, maybe even earlier, where they were the dark photograph.
Oh yeah.
In the verbiage instructions, and the things had been copied so many times that the photos were almost useless.
Yes, that it was all the, not screen printing. I forget what they call that. Like the old photographs in newspapers.
Yeah.
And man, generationally, those things did quickly become just unusable.
You got any other example of bad instructions? I've got one more, but I'll let you jump in here, man.
I have burned into my memory several Matchbox kits where the problem that you had, and this is probably across all of many, I don't want to say all, that's many of the 60s and 70s and maybe even early 80s kits, were the vague placement instructions that, here's the part and here's where you put it, here's the part you attach it to, but yeah, these are both butt joints, and you somewhere in about here. Just the placement was so vague on so many of those kits, it was easy to mess them up. Whereas, you'd look at, say, the Flyhawk kit or the Arma Hurricane or Mustang that I did for the Musaru, and their placement is pretty darn exacting, and it just makes it so much more pleasant to build.
Well, you mentioned Musaru, the one I just finished, that ICM kit, and I'll talk about more about it in the Benchtop halftime report. But for this segment on instructions, Julian raised it in his dish on OTB. The one that particularly irked him, and it did me as well, was there are a couple of parts, 3 or 4, that have to be placed by measurement.
Right.
There's no demarcation on the parts or locating features on the mating surfaces for these things. You have to actually measure from a point on the chassis to make this all work. And if you're wrong, it won't work. So I came up with a little workaround. I'll talk about it later for one of those. It's not that big a deal, but
is this a take on the old measure twice, glue once instead of measure twice, cut once?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, you probably should. And then just another aspect of that build was because of the vagueness of not so much part location, but sequence.
Uh-huh.
Sequence was very important. There were a couple places on that kit that you could assemble yourself into a corner.
And that's a completely different area where not are the bad instructions, but the instructions are actually wrong. I don't want to, wrong may not be the word. They're badly engineered.
Right. They weren't wrong. They were just there was not enough detail.
Yeah.
So you're assembling A and B to C. Well, if you assemble B to C before A, you can't fit A on there because B's in the way.
Right. And there's no indication in the instructions that you should do A first.
Right. Because it's not sequenced that way.
Right.
You know, luckily experience got me through that, but that's not always the case, right?
Right.
I could see somebody newer to modeling building that kit and then putting the running boards on the cab, and now they can't fit the cab interior in without some modifying the part.
Well, and even if you're an experienced modeler and that this is just out of your area, let's say you're an aircraft modeler or a ship modeler, and you get stuck doing the Moosaroo for that year for the podcast, and that you could be an utterly competent modeler, but because this isn't your genre, you wouldn't have any clue that generally you should do this before you do that.
Hence all my aircraft questions to you.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for.
Well, another example of what I would consider bad instructions is just dragging.
Oh, those are legendarily bad instructions.
And it's so unnecessary. I think that's what gripes a lot of people.
Right.
To their, how to say this, they have probably saved a lot of money internal to their company by the way they have kitted subjects and their subvariants.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Problem is you end up with a kit that has like a really high percentage of unused parts.
Right. Because they've taken 2 sprues from kit A.
Exactly.
3 sprues from kit B, 2 sprues from kit C, and thrown them all in a box to make variant D, which only uses about half of the parts from each sprue.
Exactly. And I completely get it.
Oh, yeah. No, from a manufacturing standpoint, that makes great sense.
The problem is you get a kit that's got 8 sprues in it when it should have had 6.
Right.
Or could have had 6. I won't say should have. And then where this kind of bites them in the butt is the instructions. So you've got a sprue diagram that's got all this blued out area of crap you're not supposed to use.
Right.
Well, that takes care of some of it. But it would appear that they're pulling and picking from multiple instruction sheets sometimes to create the new one.
Gotcha.
And just stuff falls through the cracks, and wrong parts, wrong part numbers, wrong part placement. And it's just a litany of those type of errors through their instruction sheets. And it frustrates a lot of people. Now I got to say, I don't know how many dragon kits I've even built in my snail's pace modeling career.
There's a few I can think of.
It probably is. And most of them weren't terrible, because I probably never built any Dragon Sturmgeschütz or Panzer IIIs or SDKFZ 250s or any of these that they have 10 variants of.
Right.
That's got to be frustrating.
Yeah.
So for those subjects, you kind of really need to know, kind of like Evan in the Sturmgeschütz, right? You got to know what that particular subvariant was built with.
Yeah.
And
you got to have a real familiarity.
You got any more bad instructions?
Well, okay. This is, it's not really bad. It is an example of a company doing the right thing. A few years ago, ARMA released a series of 72nd scale Wildcats, F4, F3, F4, F2, F4, F4, FM2. And in their instructions, the Wildcat has a very complex landing gear. It's really complex. And their initial set of instructions for these kits, or at least some of them, I think they may have actually corrected it in the instructions later. They weren't wrong, but they just weren't as clear as they could be. And so a number of people had real frustrations with it. And what ARMA did was they drew attention to this, and then they did a blog post on their site where they said, Here is a much more clearer and fuller explanation of how this should work in order to get the end result. And, I got to give them credit for doing that, because a lot of model companies just push the stuff out and shut up. And, if people criticize them down the road, they live with it. And they do. Arma actually, those guys are really pretty customer sensitive, and they realized this was an issue, and they did what they could to help clarify the instructions. And I wish more companies would do that. It would be great if companies, when they produced a kit, would not only give you an instruction booklet in the kit, but if they did a build blog post where they showed you with very clear photos and verbiage what the instructions were meant to illustrate, I think that would be fairly low cost and would be a great aid to modelers.
It's interesting. Now, you mentioned Arma. Now, there was some issues on the P51 for the Mooseru Cup build.
And this is not because the instructions were bad. The instructions were excellent. The thing is, that one kit can be built in 6 or 7 different variants. Arma included all sorts of variations in that one kit, so you could produce all these different variants. Well, these all had real subtle changes in many places, including things getting down to the detail of eliminating certain panel lines or certain, like fuel filler caps or something that were engraved into the fuselage if you were building version 3. And the thing is, the instructions are very, very good and very, very clear. But there were so many branching variants at a couple of steps that it was really easy, if you didn't pay super attention, that it was really easy for you to make a mistake, not because of the fact that each instruction step was very content dense. And really, the thing could have benefited from almost being twice as long, with each step being a little less dense, so that the variations stood out more. But it was a great kit.
I think one thing I remember you mentioning was that might have been a benefit to rectifying some of that is if just the thing was printed bigger. Yes,
that absolutely. Some of those notations and variations, because they were packing a lot into each step. So the print for some variations in a particular step were particularly small. And so, it could have benefited with either the whole instruction set being twice as large, which might have been a little crazy, or the instructions being twice as numerous and each step simplified down a little bit, so there were less choices to be made in each construction step.
Yeah, so like an index of the variants, and then you just skip ahead to A, B,
exactly.
C, D, or E, which had a bigger diagram.
Yeah.
And only included those parts.
Exactly.
Okay, well, maybe somebody from Arma's listening.
Yeah, but listen, if you are, please, we'd love your feedback. I love your kits. So what can you think of as good instructions?
Well, there's good and good enough, right? I mean, if you're like we've already established, coming at this from the way I come at it, there's a good enough instructions that kind of outline the suggested sequence of things.
Right.
So I think I'm always going to think it's going to be a good enough kind of instructions, but good enough, whichever. I tell you, most modern manufacturers, now I'm speaking from a position of 35th scale armor.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the major manufacturers even the ones who've only come on the scene in the last 10 years or less.
Yeah.
Generally, all of those have pretty good instructions, other than the nuances that we've talked about around the dragon instructions.
Right.
And I only mention that, those kits now are probably, most of them are outside this 10-year window I just established, but
right.
Dragon seems to be reconstituting their armor line, and a lot of the stuff's getting re-released again. And, I seriously doubt they've modernized their instruction sheets.
Right.
So Tamiya is a no-brainer, right?
Right.
They tend to break their assemblies down into what would be a logical sequence of assembly, and they kind of limited each step to a manageable number of parts.
Yeah. And that I think is important.
It is important. Do. So the exploded view for any given step only has 5, 8, 10 parts in it max, maybe, before you move on to the next one, which I think that's important, like you just said.
Yeah.
What about you? What in the aircraft realm or whatever genre you like to build is good or good enough?
Anything in the last, again, I'm like you, anything in the last 10 years is generally, unless it's a real short run manufacturer, going to be good enough. I think manufacturers generally are paying a little more attention to kit instructions, and so I think that's contributed to an overall improvement. Airfix instructions, anything in the last 10 years that I built Airfix wise, the instructions have been very clear. Tamiya, of course, is one of the gold standards. Arma, like I said, with the P51, with the P51B, there were the fact that there were variants, but the instructions themselves were very clear about what part goes where, and even having the sequence down correct so that you didn't build yourself into a corner. Airfix, Arma, Tamiya, even the latest ICM and IBG kits are now ICM, I'd say, is a half step behind the others, but it's just catching up. They're not bad. Although your truck experience, it demonstrates.
It's an old kit.
That's one of their older kits. IBG has really come on, and their instructions are very, very clear. So, in general, I think if you buy main run production kits from major manufacturers made in the last 10 or 15 years, unless there's just a goof by the manufacturer in the instructions, generally they're going to be pretty good or good enough.
I agree with that. But I tell you, Dave, there's something else out there for a small niche of the scale modeling world.
Okay.
In particular, large scale aircraft, 32nd scale.
All right.
And I would call this instructions plus. Now, what I'm talking about is some instructions, some build guides, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a couple of these. They're from a gentleman named Glenn Hoover.
These are third party
instruction guides. And the two I have, they're both for 32nd scale aircraft because, I'm way outside my comfort zone there, right? I mean, small aircraft are one thing, big aircraft
right.
are something else. I've got one for Kitty Hawk's OS2U Kingfisher.
Right.
And I've got one for the Revell Arado 196A3, their float plane, right?
Right.
Now, Glenn Hoover is a retired system engineer with a long career in the defense and aerospace industry, and he's got a lot of experience writing these things. And I came across him, I think, surfing around the large scale aircraft website. It's a website.
Large scale planes.
Large scale planes, yeah. I think there's maybe a forum there as well.
Yeah.
And these are really interesting, Dave. What Glenn does is he takes the kit instructions and the most apropos aftermarket, typically, the Edward sets. Now for these, there's a Big Ed set for the Kingfisher, which I know your favorite Edward sets, but for
Yeah.
for 30-second scale, they may make a little more sense.
Yes, I will concede that.
And then he's got multiple sets for the Revell Erato 196. And he takes the assembly sequence and basically dispenses he dispenses with the manufacturer's suggested sequence. And he reorders things where it makes sense to, right? Through the experience we've talked about.
Right.
So, maybe 80% of this is still the same sequence, but where things are being assembled onto the fuselage or wings that are likely to get broken through further handling, he moves those. So
Right.
it's a whole new systems engineer approach to how to assemble this kit. Now, what's interesting is where like the Edward aftermarket comes into play. He brings those instructions in at the appropriate times of the build sequence for the plastic parts, and gives you a plan to incorporate those items at the right time.
Yeah, which Edward does not do at all. Edward is, here are the photo etch parts, here's where they go. Not with no indication about where in the build sequence you should actually be doing this stuff.
So, for example, this Kingfisher one that I've got, gosh, how many steps? He's broken the assembly down. He's parsing this pretty fine. It's pretty granular, right?
Right.
952 line item steps. So he's cutting it pretty thin.
Right.
And the Erato 196 is similarly done. I really like these things. And if folks are into large scale planes and want to check these out, it's GlennHooverModels.com, one word, Glenn Hoover Models. And he's got these books for quite a few subjects. There may be some 48 scale ones in there too. I can't remember, but I picked these up because, these are two. If I ever build any 32nd scale aircraft, and I hope I do, because I've already accumulated the kits, right?
Right.
These are the two.
Yeah.
I love both of these airplanes. Dave, I need all the help I can get. Let's be
I
honest
hear you.
here.
No, I hear you.
It's an interesting approach. I would like to see, maybe some other genre try something like this.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be. Maybe some complex armor build. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Especially if it was an older kit and had a lot of aftermarket. I think that would lend itself to it. But
Right.
I don't know. He's got something interesting going on here, and I bought 2 of his books. I intend to follow them should I get around to these kits, but it's just another way to do this. And the system engineer, and I've seen a lot of stuff written this way in my career. It's very, this is very typical in the engineering world.
Yeah. Somebody who's been in that world a long, long time.
Yes. Somebody writing instructions for someone who may not have all the information, the investment of the information, I guess would be a way to say it.
Yeah.
They can get right to the heart of the matter using this guide. So it's a good thing. Got anything else on instructions, Dave?
No, other than, and I'm going to touch on this more in our benchtop halftime report. I don't think I know a modeler who finishes a kit and doesn't go think to themselves, okay, if I did this again, I would change this. I would do this, and this differently. And some of that is either build sequence or stuff like that. And that type of stuff, you try and look at instructions ahead of time and anticipate, but a lot of times, a lot of those things don't become obvious to you until you've actually built the kit through once. It really would be, that's one place where YouTube modeling, actual builds, and blog posts with reviews and commentary can really come in handy in telling you the instructions tell you to do this here, but you should wait and do it here. There's no way to get that but from experience in some cases.
Well, I agree with that. It makes you wonder if you ever want to build the same kit twice.
You know what? These people like Barry Numerick, who builds 109s like he's the Bavarian Fluggewerks, or Inch, where he's doing a batch build. That is an advantage of doing that, is that you gain that experience.
We'll have to ask him that.
Yes.
Because that's a good point. If you're batch building, do you do it all the same way, or do you learn from the first two and incorporate the change in sequence into the next 4, 5, or 6 you got in the batch?
Make a note. We'll ask him that.
Well, Dave, we ran into another past guest at HeritageCon.
Yes, we did.
Mr. John Chung.
Yeah.
And as you'll hear in this sequence, I didn't recognize him at first because he changed his hair up a little bit.
Yes, he did.
So that was
And he
fun.
sounded a lot better, too.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, that wasn't your fault.
Even, probably was.
No, that was not your fault.
Had I had the knowledge to not make
Yeah,
that
we
mistake.
learned, again, like building with instructions, we learned something.
He didn't need to be the test plane, though.
No, that's true.
Well, Dave, let's hear what John had to say at HeritageCon. Well, Dave, like last segment, part of the fun coming up here is talking to our Canadian friends and past guests. We owe a little something to. Mr. John Chung, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. You guys don't owe me anything. Thank you so much.
I know. We had a little technical difficulty when you're on our episode, and I think we know the cause of that now. So
it's all great. It's really good to see you guys up here. Thanks for making the trip up to Canada again.
I didn't recognize you with the haircut.
Yeah.
It's what happened after COVID, right? Things change. Gotta shed the COVID hair.
Well, how's it been since we last talked to you?
Been doing well. Yeah, it's life's busy, work's busy. I've been shifting gear from the space shuttle, working on the 48 scale F-16.
Okay.
Viper.
Oh, wow. The kinetic kit?
No, the Tamiya kit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a nice little kit. No, anybody who's built it know that it's typical Tamiya fashion. Except I'm backdating from a Charlie to an Alpha, so a bit of a scratch building going on over there.
Oh man.
Gotcha.
Are you? Your scale scriber? I can only imagine you're cutting lines on that thing too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a bit of a scribing job on the spine. You have to shrink the vertical stabilizer base a little bit, and then got to reposition a few of the surface panel lines on the spine. But yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Well, what state is the shuttle in?
The shuttle is a little bit more than where I left it off a year or so ago.
Okay.
So the aft end is just about done, where the heat shields are for the engine bells. And I am just about ready to go into the main wings.
Okay.
So that does require a little bit of a surgery to get the shape correct, and the camber and the elevons, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, that needs to be trimmed down a little bit. But hopefully after that I can get into scribing.
It's impressive work, man. It always is. We were really enjoying the shuttle, and I've seen some of the F-16.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It's, the shuttle, I can't wait to get back to it. But you know what, though? Every time I take a pause on the shuttle to do something else, I'm actually a little thankful for it. Since I paused on the shuttle, I've gotten a new computer, which means that I can turn up the resolution on the Smithsonian 3D model.
Okay.
Which will be helpful when I get into the tight spot for gathering references. And also, I've been downloading a lot of new photos, historical photos of, say, the cargo bay interior that will come in handy when I go in and detail the cargo bay itself.
So you're faced with a lot of work on that. I mean, still the road's long, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So glad to hear you're still enjoying it. And I know, how does taking a break from it, how does that help you out? Just helps you?
It's been good. I think I've always been an aircraft builder at heart, and I always will be. So to step away from a subject that is not, because in a traditional sense, it's not really an aircraft in its purest form. So be able to finish an aircraft once in a while, that really helps motivate me. It gets me back into the big picture of why I like model building and specifically aircraft building. It helps me to practice some of the skills I wouldn't be able to do on the space shuttle. For instance, I wouldn't be able to do a detailed cockpit or on the carriage bay. I wouldn't be doing external stores, for instance.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to exercise the same type of weathering, for instance, that I would be on a military aircraft versus a spacecraft. So, it's good to switch gears, like cleanse my palate a little bit. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it. Hopefully it's coming to an end soon, though. It's been on my bench for over 10 months, I think.
Okay. What's next?
What's next? Hopefully back to the space shuttle.
Okay. I didn't know if you have another aircraft.
Now, did you buy anything here at the show?
No, not today, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm trying to restrain myself.
I hear you.
I did see another space shuttle here for $75 Canadian.
Yeah.
That is tempting me, but I think I will endeavor to finish my current one first before jumping to another vehicle.
I hear you.
Now, did you enter anything today?
No, I was hoping to finish the F-16, but I'm not going to rush it. I think I'm going to enjoy this process of building it to the way that I really want it to be.
The best. Don't rush it. Get it done when it gets done, then you can enter it in the next contest that comes up.
Yeah, that's a slow and steady wins the race, right?
Yep. I tell that to Mike all the time.
Because I'm slow. Maybe more slow than steady, but
there you go.
Yeah, hopefully that works out that way.
But yeah, it's been a good show. It's always a good show here at Hamilton, and a lot of good entries. I think we're north of 700 entries.
Yep.
That's what I hear. A lot of good people coming up here from down south as well, and a lot of old faces, and it's always a good time.
Any hopes or ability to come to Madison, Wisconsin in the summer?
Probably not this year. Yeah, it's family's going to keep me at home here in Toronto
we
for
talked
the next little bit.
offline about that. You gotta
bring the baby.
Family's getting a little bigger.
Family's. I'm apparently moving on to another 1-to-1 scale model of myself. So I'm going to try to.
Yeah, but you're not finishing it.
That one's going to be a little bit of a work in progress.
Yes, it is.
So, but hey, you never know, right? Maybe in a year or two, we'll have an early adopter into the hobby coming down to a national.
Best of luck. Best of luck with that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on again. Good to see you guys.
Well, we're going to have to come up with a topic and have you on for real in this year before it's out. Maybe you don't have much time to model because of your family expansion. You can at least get an hour and pick your brain. And
that'll be great. It's always
some topic out there. I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys.
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Well, I enjoyed seeing John again, Dave, and we're going to have to cook up a topic and get him back on.
Yes.
He's got some amazing talent, and
yes,
we'll see if he gets that shuttle done.
Yes. Yep. And he's working on an F-16 now, so we've got to get him back on that. And we can also get tips about raising babies and toddlers. See, we can become a more well-rounded podcast.
We could. Dave, it's the Benchtop Halftime Report brought to you by Squadron. Folks, head on over to Squadron for the latest kits and accessories, all at a great price and with some great service. If you're a modeler on the go, Dave, you can check out the Squadron mobile app. It's available for both Apple and Android devices for easy shopping from just about anywhere.
It's a great app. It's really nice, although it leads you to shopping.
That's right. Squadron, add into your stash. Yours too, Dave, since 1968. My friend, what's on your bench?
Well, first let me tell you what's not on my bench. Not on my bench any longer. I finished the Trumpeter 72nd scale LCM3 kit, my first completion of the year. I really enjoyed it. First, this is a kit that I'm building for the September's group entry for the Nationals up in Madison. This is probably the first time in a long time I have finished a group entry ahead of time. It's also one of the few times where I've really enjoyed building it, and it didn't become a slog that I resented halfway through it. I've talked about before, I have two goals when I build a model. One, I want it to be better than the last model I built, in my opinion. And number two, I want to try new things and learn new things. And in this case, I was 50% successful. In my opinion, it's not better than the previous models I've built. That's partly due to my fault, partly due to it being a new genre for me generally. But I learned a bunch. To run through a few, this is the first kit that I have used nothing but Mr. Color for exclusively in painting. And I love it. And I'm going to continue to use it more and more and more. I used the VMS photo etch primer that I got from VMS. And I learned that even though it says you brush it on with a brush onto your photo etch parts, that's not what you should do. If you're going to use this stuff, you should airbrush it on because it just does not self-level. So, and I'm still not 100% sold on the product yet. I'm going to give it a little more use to see, and we'll see down the road what I think about the necessity of it. But definitely don't brush it on the part. First kit, I've cut and used stencils for the markings, and they're not perfect, but this is I'm just crawling up the learning curve on using the Cameo cutter. I like it. I'm going to be using it more and more in the future. I think I'll be painting a lot more of my markings. I don't think I'm giving up decals entirely, but I do think that I will be doing more and more of my markings as stencils and masks. Like I said, I had real fun building it. And that's ultimately the market. It's a hobby. And if you're not having fun, you really need to step back and say, what am I doing wrong here? Why am I doing this if you're not enjoying it? And I enjoyed it pretty much from beginning to end. So it's off my bench. I also managed to take the Musaru from 2023 that I built and transport it up to HeritageCon and had it break during transportation. And so I didn't get put on the table at HeritageCon in 2023. I managed to, in a day, repair it so that I could take it and enter it at HeritageCon, which I did. So the Musaru actually got to HeritageCon and got entered. And you know what I figured out? That thing sat in a little Tupperware container for just short of an entire year, when it would have taken me a day, less than a day, to repair. But I think that I was so frustrated by the fact that I had worked to get it done and that it had broke when I transported it. And I just got so dang frustrated. There was a mental block created. And I finally said, with the HeritageCon coming up this year, I finally said, to heck with it. I'm pulling it out. I'm putting this thing together. And I did, and I like it. And it's sitting in my display case. It got entered at HeritageCon. And, there's a mental block when a model that you finish gets broken. But it is more mental than anything else. You can go back and repair it, and it's not nearly the problem that you make it out in your head.
Now back to the group build.
Yes,
the LCM. You had that kit already, right?
I did have that kit already.
So it's not like you sign up for a group build and you're like, I gotta go find a kit I might want to build.
Well, I did do some consideration of that, but I knew
you already had it.
Right, but I knew I already had this kit, so it was like, yeah, I want to do this. So it was something I wanted to do. You're right, rather than something that the group build came and then I had to go out and buy the kit, find a kit that I was willing to do. And but then I'm moving forward on the A7M SAM, the fine molds kit, partly with your help. because you took one look at the impeller that I stole from a Tamiya Focke-Wulf 190 kit and said, I can do better than that in an hour and a half on CAD. And you did.
Well, they're in the mail.
Yes, I can't wait. I should get them tomorrow or the next day, so I can't wait for those. I probably shouldn't admit this given the other things that are still pending, but I started that Flyhawk BT7 kit. I just
try to keep it a secret.
Yeah, well, I did for a little bit. First of all, you people who complain about 72nd scale aircraft, let me tell you, some of the suspension parts on this BT7 are tinier than anything I've done on a 72nd scale aircraft kit. So I don't want to hear any more complaining. Number two, this kit not only are the instructions really great, but boy, this kit is engineered well. I mean, it goes together. The tolerances are tight. The parts fit just incredibly well. I'm about, I'd say, a third of the way through the assembly, and I'm super impressed by this kit. I really am. And it's going to give me a chance once I get it all assembled to go back to Evan's YouTube video of his presentation at the Nationals last year and help me learn armor weathering. So, but yeah, my bench is rocking. I feel great about it. I just wish I had more time because, of course, spring's here. And now there's all the honeydew stuff, and there's the yard, and there's do-it-yourself and renovation projects. So I just wish I had more time. How about you?
Well, I haven't gotten a lot done since we got back from HeritageCon. I wish I had, but I do want to dish a little bit on the Musaru Cup.
Yes.
Because I've kind of was saving that until the whole contest was over and everybody got their builds done. Well, first off, congratulations to Chris Maddings for his win.
Yes.
He did a lot of work on that crappy little kit, and I did too. But he did a very nice job. He did, and interestingly, I thought about this. No hard feelings. Would I like to repeat it and won again? Yeah, sure, but we really don't get anything for it except bragging rights. And I got a pretty good reaction on mine from the folks who saw it. I really appreciated that, and that was a lot of fun. But we both kind of approached the build from opposite sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
You have a kit that's not that great.
You're so diplomatic.
Now, to expound on that a little bit, there's been a lot said about it. TJ Haller said a whole bunch about it.
Yeah. None of it wrong.
None of it wrong. That's exactly right. I'm not going to disagree with any of that. Everything that has been said about that kit from the folks involved is accurate and true. I think where some of us are different is I cut my teeth on some really crappy Eastern European kits 20 years ago. So when I was faced with that, you're kind of like you're at the optometrist, right? You can start throwing those lenses in front of your eyes and change the way you see things. I was well aware of what I was getting into. Maybe some folks who were into some more contemporary kits saw that as a total train wreck. They wouldn't be wrong. There's a little perspective there as to how you maybe digest that and work your way through it. But back to what I was saying about two sides of the same coin, you've got this kit that's not that good. So I guess the approach I would say to simplify it is if you can't fix it, feature it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So there's two ways to do that. Well, maybe there's more than two, but the two that Chris and I took are different, but they're two ways to do it. You can take this kit that doesn't fit that great and doesn't have that great a detail, and you can chop it up and make a derelict out of it, kind of get around some of the non-niceties about that kit, right?
Right.
That's one way to do it. And he did a great job of it. Oh,
absolutely.
And the way I took was, all right, let's not try to make this crappy kit look good. Instead of making it not look like a toy, let's make it look like a toy.
Make it look more like a toy.
Make it look more like a toy. So that's the approach I took.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little bit to that. I mean, so how do you make plastic look like die-cast metal? Well, you put about freaking 18 layers of paint on it, followed by about 18 layers of gloss. And you start softening the corners on all the details, and it starts looking like a clunky piece of die-cast metal.
Yep. And then you have to figure out how to put red stripes on the tires.
We'll get to that in a minute. The other thing I did was you got some plastic parts, like a Hot Wheels or Matchbox toy. You got some die-cast parts, and you got some molded in color plastic parts.
Right.
So, and none of the kit was molded in green or whatever, right? It was light gray or black.
Right.
So how do I make parts I want to look like plastic look like molded in color plastic? Well, again, that's multiple layers of your color, not as much as trying to make it look like die-cast metal. And then like 15 layers of satin varnish.
Right.
To start making it have that translucent, soapy look to it.
Mm-hmm.
Worked out pretty well.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Everybody who saw it, loved the idea. The fact that you looked at this kit and said, this is a mess. What can I do with it? And the great thing is that you, Evan, and I were driving down to San Marcos, and you opened this kit up on our drive down. And within 15 minutes of you having opened it and us sitting there in the car, and you came up with this presentation idea. And it worked to the kit's weaknesses as opposed to its strength.
Yeah, I think so. And I think Chris did that as well.
Yes, you're right. The other way to do it is take the vehicle
and dissect it.
Right. And yeah, take it apart like a frog.
Well, and to our topic of instructions, another thing that I'll bring up that was, I noticed when folks were posting in Dave Goldfinch's Mooseroo Facebook group, the front wheels, the instructions were really vague. And there was an issue with the front wheels that on the front axles, there are two steps. You got a small diameter, then it steps up to a medium diameter, then it steps up to what's essentially I think it's the brake hub.
Right.
A lot of folks who built this stopped at that first step on the front axles. So they have these front wheels, which are sticking out past the front fenders.
Right.
And they're at a wider stance than the rear wheels. That's not where they go.
And it's just not, the instructions made no note of that.
The instructions really made no note of it. You really had to size those holes up a little bit bigger and get the wheels to sit up against the brake drums, which is where they should be. Right. And all six wheels should be along the same track.
Right.
And that was easy to miss. I mentioned it before. There was a point in the instructions, especially with the cab construction. If you didn't think about what you're doing and work it out in your head, if you put the cab steps on before you put the interior in, you would have to go back and modify the kit interior to get it to fit past those, because there was no room to get it on there.
Right.
Now, in my build, I wanted to have this interior module that was the dashboard, the steering wheel, and the seats, like a Hot Wheels car that was all one part molded in one color. So I had to figure out how to glue those things all together, slip it in at the end, which I was going to put that in a different order that I think maybe the kit instructions intended. So I modified it so it would fit past the cab steps. But again, if you weren't paying attention and that was not your intent to do what I did, you could build yourself into a corner. And I think there was an issue there. The thing has fender liners on the front fenders.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you put those in too soon as well, that's going to be problematic for you.
Yeah.
But the other issue with that kit is the black plastic parts have, well, one, it's probably like a high percentage of regrind or recycled material. That's part of the problem. The other problem is it has way more colorant in it, pigment in the plastic. You're sanding these black plastic parts, and you sand for like 10, 15 minutes. Your hands are just covered with this stuff. Looks like you've been scooping coal with your hands.
Yeah.
Just a really unpleasant material to work with. It reacted strange to liquid cement. I get it. Everything everyone said about the kit is absolutely true. I think I gave it a little more grace because of some past experiences with the early Eastern European kits. But yeah, that could be an unpleasant build if you weren't weren't prepared for it. So
Yeah.
congratulations to everybody on that who got it done.
Yes. Absolutely. In fact, I think the only one that didn't finish was Julian. And I certainly understand his frustrations with the kit.
Yeah, but he wasn't really undone by the kit. He was undone by some material incompatibilities and some stuff there at the very end, which that really sucks.
Yes,
because he had a kind of cool idea too. I liked his.
I did. I liked his idea.
Well, buddy, you're on deck next.
I know. What are we gonna get?
I don't know, but I'm trying to think what else is on my bench. I got the pawl. I've got the underside touched up from my sanding from last episode. I'm ready to paint the top side green. I'm just thinking through this, and I'm just scared to pull the trigger right now. I gotta think through this.
Experiment. Remember what Steve says. Experiment.
I know. I probably need to do a little experimentation. So up next is the top side green. And again, why'd I pick a float plane for my first aircraft in 40 years? I don't know.
Oh, that's okay. This is going to turn out great. And listen, you don't see many of these built. The great thing about this, when you have it done and you put it on the table, is that people will notice it simply because you hardly ever see those things built.
That's interesting. So that's a little motivation. We'll get it done.
Yeah, you'll get there.
The KV-85, nothing new on that. I need to do the ballast work on the tracks. I've got the ballast in hand. I've got the color shift I want to do on it figured out. I just need to do it, but I want to get this airplane done.
I hear you.
I want to get the thing finished.
Hey, Mike, have you spent any money modeling kits or supplies lately?
You know the answer to that.
Yes, I was there for it.
We went to a major contest and show.
Well, okay, let's start at the beginning and feature the unicorn that you found. Because you found a unicorn. You found something that is nearly impossible to find, and you found it at a price that was astounding. And if I didn't already have one, I would have murdered you in the car on the way back to Louisville, because you did great.
I did. I found a Fine Molds KI-43 Oscar.
Right. The one that goes in the Model Graphics magazine and has not been sold separately and apparently will not be sold separately.
Well, I don't know about that. I'll take your word for it. But I know with a saved search on eBay going on a year now, probably 10 months at this point, there's never been one come up for sale.
Yeah. And that does not shock me.
Now, we were at the show. We set up our podcast equipment. I was like, let's go shopping, Dave. And
those are dangerous words, my friend.
We weren't, but in the first, really, we were
the first aisle.
It's the first aisle, the first table that I walked up to. It's Harvey Lowe of all people.
Yep.
And I look down this box and I see this, I'll call it brown paper box. It's a little fancier than that, but not much, right? And
it's a brown cardboard box, rubber banded together with a magazine, Japanese magazine.
So I'm looking at the top of it and I'm thinking, please don't be 1/3 of the what is it, Type 95 tank,
right? That
they also did with the armor version of the magazine. Right. That kit is available. I've got one already in the 3-part magazine edition anyway.
Right.
I'm like, don't be 1/3 of the tank. Don't be 1/3 of the tank. So I reach in there and pull it out, and it's the stinking KI-43.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I'm glad Harvey builds 48 scale.
Yes.
For the most part. I don't know, man. I'm going to have to take him some more money.
Yeah, no, that was a great deal. I am glad you picked that up. And again, if I didn't have one, I'd have killed you for it. But because I have one, I'm nothing but thrilled. That was the unicorn. That made, frankly, it would have been worth the whole trip just to buy that, to buy that kit.
I didn't stop there, man.
I know, I was going to say, but I'm assuming that's not the only thing you bought.
I'm trying to think what else I bought. I bought a Bronco. I can't remember the designation. It's the little Italian tankette.
But it's CV CV33.
Yeah, I think that's
Except
right.
you bought the Hungarian CV35, right?
Right. It's got a different arrangement on the machine gun setup. It's a Hungarian vehicle. That was the one I was wanting. I found it finally. That one's been kind of hard for me to find for some reason. And I bought a A10 cruiser tank from Gecko Models. We were talking, that was Chris Meddings too. We were talking about Gecko and Bronco and somebody else. I can't remember, but he was giving us the ins and outs on those kits and what had happened and recommended it as the better kit. End up picking that up. That kit's got a lot of sprues.
Yeah. And not only that, you picked it up in the boxing that has the German markings on the cover, but you really wanted the British, but it's the exact same kit and even has all those British markings. They just they released it twice, once with the British markings and once with the German markings on the box art. And I suspect that's because the German markings sell better.
I wouldn't know on a tank like that if it would or not, but the decals, there's 3 British versions and 1 German on the sheet. So it's still primarily British, and it has the British crew figure in it.
Yes, it does.
So it's the exact same kit. So
yeah,
I'm thinking, is that all I bought? I think so.
Well, that's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. What about you?
Well, let's see. Even though I didn't buy a Fine Molds KI-43, I did buy a Fujimi Judy, the version with the upward firing cannons, where they took this dive bomber aircraft and converted it into an attempt to convert it into fighter using the German style 2 cannons pointing upward where you come in underneath the bombers. I picked up a 3D printed stand for Flexophile. So I've got multiple Flexophiles and I keep a different grit on each one. So that way I can just change back and forth without having to stop and change the tape. I picked up for like $6 Canadian. This really nice, really well thought out and well printed 3D stand that holds up to 5 of them. In addition, I got picked up another Tamiya Zero.
You have a problem.
I've got a problem. Okay, I admit it. I picked up 4 Chinese submarines in 700 scale. I really like 700 scale submarines. I've got a collection of probably 6 or 8 already built Russian, Japanese, US submarines. They're perfect little models for conversation pieces. And that scale, they're small enough that they're really quick, easy, and doable. And I had never seen these before, and I came across them at the barrel store table and ended up buying those. And then the folks at Alpha Abrasives, the guys who do the Flexophile stuff, they're out of Canada, so they're always at that show. And one of the things that they had that I stocked up on, again, at good Canadian prices, they had all of the Albion alloy tubing. So they had the different very, very small diameter tubes. And then they had the sets where they give you 2 sets of tubes that fit into each other, telescoping tubing. So I picked up like 6 or 8 sets of that. I think that's everything I picked up.
Well, I mentioned everything I got at HeritageCon, but I've spent other money.
Well, I've spent a little bit more. I did last episode. I mentioned that Bronco had that Chinese launch vehicle and that I had ordered it. It came in, so that I can count that as breaking my wallet this time, even though I ordered it last time, but I didn't have it in hand until this episode. Yeah, you spent some money on some books, didn't you?
Yeah, David Doyle. They did a second printing of Son of Sherman.
Yes.
and I'd missed it the first time. Back to Karnauka's question, I've missed a kit, but there's been a few books I've missed along the way.
Yep.
And because books can be kind of expensive, and you kind of, I'll think about it. But, you think about a limited print book, and it's gone, and you're not going to see it again unless they reprint it. They did a second printing, and I pre-ordered it, and I got it a few days ago. 2 volumes. Man, it's a bunch, man. It's a lot. That book's pair is almost overwhelming.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, there's still other Sherman related stuff that isn't covered. You would think in 2 volumes of that size and depth that everything would be covered, but there's still some Canadian and British variants that aren't covered in
there. And I think that's the crux, is that it's the American Sherman story for the most part.
Right.
The Canadian Rams are in there, which are, I don't know, that's less of a Sherman than a Canadian Grizzly, in my opinion.
Right.
That's interesting. I don't know. It begs to wonder if there's going to be maybe an addendum at some point that covers.
That's the same thing I wondered, is if maybe there would be a separate third volume type thing where he does those.
I don't know, but I'm glad to have it. It was expensive. That was probably the most I've ever spent on books outside of college.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to have my copy, and I look forward to diving into that and seeing what kind of inspiration might come out of that series.
There are a lot of rabbit holes in that book, man.
Oh yeah, there are for sure. Anything else?
That's about it. Mike, have you finished your modeling fluid, or at least gotten it worked down a little?
I have, man.
And I'm betting Bulleit 10-year was pretty good.
It was pretty good, but it's kind of juxtapositioned against the Russell's 10-year I've been enjoying over the last several months, almost a year now, I guess. Bulleit is known for being high rye content in the mash bill.
Right.
And I think that comes out even more in the 10-year.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty spicy.
Okay, compared to the Russell 10-year, price point, the Russell's slightly more expensive?
No, it's cheaper than the
Is it
Bulleit
actually
10.
cheaper?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Russell's Reserve 10-year is about the most affordable 10-year. That may be an absolute statement, or it's definitely a bottle I'm willing to even try statement.
Gotcha.
There may be some other 10-years out there. There may be an old granddad 10-year. I don't know. A Rebel Yell 10-year.
Yeah.
I don't know, but this one's good. It's good. It's just a lot. It's a different palate than the Russells. The Russells a lot more sweet. So both good. I think I prefer the Russells, but you can't go wrong either way. If you're a budget guy, the Russells for sure. How's the black cherry, man?
It was actually really pretty good. It both sweet and tart. It is a cider. So again, you're not having a beer. You're having a cider. You expect the sweet. With cherry, you expect some tart. It's 6.9% alcohol by volume. So it's a little more alcoholic than most ciders, but not a lot. Most hover right around 5. I enjoyed it. I might not be something that I would drink every day, but it is definitely something that I would drink on the regular.
Well, I'll have to look at the link in the show notes. I'm sure you're going to put, because
yes,
that's a flavor I might actually try.
Yes, you'll have to try it.
Maybe the pears, but just the general apple ones. I've had those, and they're not for me. They're all right, but they're not for me.
I hear you. Mike, we are truly at the end of the show now, and all we got left are some shout-outs. Do you have any shout-outs?
I do. We probably have some overlap. Most of these stem from our trip to HeritageCon. I got to shout out Chris Wallace, model airplane maker, for setting up the accommodations for all of us.
He is the man.
We talked about it, I think, a little bit in the 12-minute model sphere, but we're going to mention it again here. I don't see how we could have got any closer without a tent.
Yeah.
And sleeping on the museum grounds or in an airplane. I mean, literally, we were maybe 300 yards from the museum, maybe 4.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. So, Chris, I hope that place is available next year, because that's where we want to stay, buddy.
Yeah. And it was a fantastic, just the right size. And it was obviously brand new.
Yeah.
I doubt many people had stayed in it prior to us. And man, it was perfect for hosting the late night activities, sit around, get together, talk modeling, and drink some adult beverages gathering. It just could not have been better from every standpoint.
Well, you got a shout out?
Yes, I want to shout out our friends Mark Copeland and Steve Hustad, who made the journey to HeritageCon, at least partly because we praised it so highly last year. And those guys live far, far away, far enough that the trip was a 2-day trip each way for them. So they really committed time and resources to make the trek.
Yeah, you got probably wasn't 2 full days, but by the time you add it all up, it was probably close to 3 full days driving.
Yeah.
And that's a lot for a 1-day show.
Yes, for a 1-day show, but a great 1-day show.
That's right.
And we had a fantastic time with them. We spent time at the dojo talking, sharing. I get to check off my bucket list that I've now had a Steve Hustad martini. And that's an experience that I won't soon forget. And it was just great seeing the guys. I'm glad they came. I'm glad they made that effort. How about you?
Well, you talked about the after hours. We had a couple of nights of that from the Model Geeks podcast. Darren Cook, D-Ran, and El Presidente Tim Holland hung out with us 2 nights, went out to dinner with us 2 nights. We saw a lot of Darren last year and his wife at HeritageCon 15, and just nice to sit down with those guys and hang out with them a little more than we get to like at the IPMS Nationals, because there's just so many more people and so much more going on that we don't get to do that quite to this degree. But guys, it was fun having you guys around and enjoying your company, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, and sympathies to Darren on his father-in-law's passing. That happened right as HeritageCon was ending. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Darren and his lovely spouse. That's a tough thing to go through.
Got any more?
One final one, and this one is to the guys at Roscoe Turner. We are not going to be there this year. That hurts our soul, because that is the first contest Mike and I ever took the podcast to, ever recorded at. It was, the first contest we attended post-COVID. That just has such a place in our hearts. And if we were single men who ruled our weekends unreservedly, we would no doubt be there. But because of the way HeritageCon, Indy, and Amps fall, we just could not make it happen. We look forward to being there next year. So even though we're not there, I hope you all have a fantastic show. I have no doubt you will.
Well, Dave, as always, I'm going to shout out all the folks who contribute to Plastic Model Mojo through their generosity. We've got several avenues folks can do that. We've got PayPal, we got Patreon, we got Buy Me a Coffee, and of course, we've got the Plastic Model Mojo merchandise store. If you'll go to www.plasticmodelmojo.com, pick out one of the top latest 3-4 episodes, because we've been getting this in the show notes, and in those show notes you will find links to all this stuff, and that's the best way to find it, and we really appreciate it. It really helps us push forward in 2024, and we hope to bring you more and better content because of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Dave, we're at the bloody end, my friend.
Yes, we are.
Episode 113 is coming to a close, folks. As we always say, so many kits,
so little time.
All right, man. Well, let's get our bags packed to head to South Bend, Dave.
You got it. See you soon.
All right.